Have you noticed how in today's world, perhaps more than ever before, women are taught to fear silence? How the stillness of their own body is painted as absence, as emptiness, as failure. Yet what if the opposite were true? What if that silence was not a void but the soul's very first whisper, a delicate murmur of awakening? What if when a woman turns away, consciously or unconsciously, from the games of desire and the prisons of shallow affection, something deeper begins to move inside her? Something ancient, something untouchable, something that does not belong to the gaze of others, but only to her. It is not absence, it is presence. It is not lack, it is expansion. Carl Jung once said that all repressed energy finds new ways to manifest, and perhaps this is exactly what he meant. When the body falls silent, when immediate pleasure no longer distracts, the soul finally has space to speak. Have you ever wondered why so many women, after seasons of abstinence, report strange and luminous awakenings? Dreams that turn more vivid, intuitions that grow sharper, sensitivity that feels almost unbearable yet divine. This is not coincidence. This is calling. This is the sacred transformation of desire into vision, of silence into light. The body, deprived of external touch, begins to turn inward. And there, in that long-forgotten territory, a woman rediscovers herself. Not the self she learned to show others. Not the self adapted to love, applause, or validation. But the deeper self, the one who waited in shadows, the one never fully seen, not even by her own eyes. This is not just about celibacy. This is about transmutation. About energy refusing to waste itself in search of others, choosing instead to build temples within. Society does not understand such women. Conditioned by endless models of sexual validation, the world trembles before a woman who withdraws, because she becomes unpredictable, mysterious, untouchable, and most of all, she begins to see beyond the games, beyond the repetitive cycles, beyond the masks of relationships that suffocate more than they free. Jung would call this an encounter with the shadow, a meeting with the parts of herself she once repressed, her power, her longing, her rage, her truth. It is in this silence that a woman stops waiting to be chosen. She begins instead to choose. She no longer loves in order to be loved. She loves because her being itself is overflowing with love. And when she turns that love upon herself, something alchemical happens. Everything superficial begins to dissolve. There is a silence that is not emptiness, but temple. When the body halts, it is because the soul prepares to ignite. And when the soul ignites, the world cannot contain her light. A woman who steps away from sex or relationships is not dead inside. She is alive in ways most cannot imagine. What looks like absence is actually abundance of inner presence. What looks like loneliness is communion with something no hand, no kiss, no passion could ever give. It is in that sacred stillness that the archetype of the wild woman awakens. The one who carries ancestral wisdom. The one who remembers the languages of earth and moon. The one who feels instinct not as chaos but as guidance. She does not need an audience. She does not need applause. Her worth is not borrowed. She has become her own fire. Can you feel it? This calling is not for everyone. It is for the few who are tired of trading their essence for fleeting connection. For the few who sense that what they seek is not in any lover's arms, but in radical encounter with themselves. If you are listening, perhaps you are closer to this journey than you realize. Yes, the body falls silent, but that silence is not weakness. It is strength retreating into itself to become power. When the soul begins to speak, there is no turning back. A woman who has heard her soul can never again settle for the low volume of ordinary love. She becomes tuned to a different frequency, one that makes shallow affection unbearable, one that makes her truth impossible to silence. There comes a moment in every woman's life when the noise of the world becomes too heavy. Not the external noise, but the inner murmur of expectations that are not hers. Desires she was told to feel, roles she was taught to play. It is in the exhaustion of carrying masks that the journey back to herself begins. Jung wrote that everything we deny within ourselves returns as fate. And perhaps this is why, when the body chooses silence, it is not a mistake, it is destiny. Something larger is trying to be born. The woman who withdraws from the impulses that once guided her is already answering a call. She feels a nostalgia without name. Not for a man. Not for a touch. Not for a passionate night. It is nostalgia for herself. For a home inside she has not yet seen, but somehow knows exists. Abstinence, in this light, is no punishment. It is portal. A crossing toward wholeness. Jung named it individuation. The long journey where we stop projecting our souls onto others and finally meet ourselves face to face. At first, the emptiness hurts. Feels like absence. But slowly she realizes, this emptiness is space. Sacred ground being cleared for something real. Old relationships, old nights of tears, old cycles that never made sense. They begin to appear under new light. They were never wasted. They were preparing her for this awakening. The woman who embraces silence is not retreating. She is rewriting. She is taking the pen back from hands that wrote her story for too long. At first, there is anguish. Invisible to others but deep, gnawing like the sea pulling at the shore. Friends will not understand. Family will urge her to return, to go out, to smile more, to seek companionship. But she knows deep down this is not isolation. This is immersion. This is not punishment. This is initiation. Jung saw this as the shadow's first appearance. When the ego panics because it is losing control, when the soul begins to whisper its demands. Many cannot endure this stage. They return to old patterns. They accept lukewarm love. They tell themselves something is better than nothing. But the woman who stays, even through tears, even through doubt, is being shaped into something far greater. She is being summoned to break the cycle. And cycles are never broken by force, only by awareness. The cocoon tightens before the butterfly is born. That is what she feels. Suffocation, restlessness, doubt. Yet deep down she knows. This pain is not error, it is transition. She is not ending, she is transforming. She carries in her silence the seed of a new being, gestating in the darkness. Even if she fears she is alone, misunderstood, too deep for the world around her. There is a quiet voice that does not leave her. A presence that insists, not loudly, but with unwavering patience. That presence is the archetypal feminine, the anima, as Jung named it. The bridge between consciousness and mystery. And when a woman begins to speak with this presence, she is never the same again. Her body is not on pause. It is in ritual. Every quiet night, every withheld desire, every moment of restraint is not loss but offering. The modern world has forgotten such rituals. But her soul remembers. And when she remembers, something shifts. What was once restlessness becomes question. What was once emptiness becomes altar. She asks, why did I ever need to be desired to feel alive? Why did absence of another feel like death? Why was I willing to trade my essence for validation? And slowly the chains begin to fall. The transformed woman no longer accepts relationships as anesthesia. She no longer seeks affection to escape solitude. Even if it costs her long silent nights, she knows her body is not deprived. It is protected. She understands that energy once wasted must now be guarded, gathered, nurtured. She is not abstinent. She is vigilant. The transformation becomes clear when she realizes she no longer longs to be sought. She herself has become the center. She herself has become the fire. Those who approach must meet her there, in truth, in fullness, or not at all. And when her light turns on, those unable to bear its intensity will fall away. She will never again belong to half-loves, half-truths, half-alive relationships. For she herself is no longer half. She is whole. And the world fears whole women because they cannot be manipulated. They cannot be bought by flattery or broken by absence. They stand like mountains, silent, immovable, radiant. This woman has discovered a new state of consciousness. One without rush, without hunger, without the need to prove. The silence of her body has become language. And that language can only be heard by those who dare to dwell in their own depths. Jung called this the reconciliation with the feminine unconscious, the rediscovery of ancient symbols buried under centuries of repression. This reconciliation is not intellectual. It is presence. It is breath. It is fire in stillness. But the journey is not gentle. There are nights when anguish returns, when temptation knocks, when old patterns beg her to come back. There are days when invisibility feels unbearable, when she fears time is slipping, when society's voice screams, "Hurry, hurry, your youth will fade." And yet she stays. She stays because something in her refuses to return to chains. She stays because she has glimpsed freedom. The world does not know what to do with her. Friends call her too distant. Family calls her too serious. Lovers call her too much. But she knows she is not too much. She is exact. She is whole. And wholeness makes the fragmented nervous. Temptations will always appear. Invitations, old lovers, distractions. But she has tasted herself. And once a woman tastes her own soul, no counterfeit sweetness can satisfy her again. She understands now that her body's silence was never dormancy. It was incubation. It was power gathering itself. Slowly, the unease transforms. What was once desperation for connection becomes a deep reverence for solitude. What was once hunger becomes discernment. What was once need becomes choice. She can still love, yes. She can still desire, yes. But now, her love will never come from lack. Only from overflow. And that difference changes everything. When love returns, and it will not come to complete her. She is already complete. It will not come to rescue her. She has already rescued herself. Love will come only to walk beside her, never to chain her. And until that love arrives, she remains steady. Not waiting, not empty, but full. Guarding the flame within. Listening to the voice that whispers beneath silence. Because she knows now, the silence of her body was never absence. It was initiation. Every loss she endured, every abandonment, every night of tears. None of it is wasted. It was all preparing her for this. Now she no longer mourns what she lost. She celebrates what she found. Her scars are no longer shame. They are maps. Her past is no longer prison. It is prophecy. Carl Jung once said that what we deny will enslave us, but what we integrate will transform us. This woman has integrated her silence. She has made absence her teacher. She has turned loneliness into altar. And in doing so, she has become untouchable. Not because no one can reach her, but because no one can control her. She rises not as someone returning to the world, but as someone becoming the world. Every step conscious, every choice sacred, her presence enough, her silence sacred, her laughter, when it comes, brighter than ever before, because it is born not of performance, but of freedom. This is the woman who walked through abstinence and discovered abundance, who turned silence into language, who met her shadow and found light, who made herself whole, and in wholeness, became dangerous to every system that profits from brokenness. She is no longer waiting to be chosen. She has chosen herself. And once a woman chooses herself, there is no power on earth that can unmake her. Because in the end, silence is not emptiness. It is birth. And the woman who has heard her soul will never again accept the smallness of ordinary love. She is not waiting. She is igniting. And from her flame, the world will never be the same.